Welcome back, students. I am your geography teacher Vandana Joshi and you are watching SST June. So students, as in our previous video, we have started our new chapter in first book of geography, that is geomorphic process. So in that first part you have already studied about the structure and the nature of our earth structure and the geomorphic process, as well as you have studied about the endogenic process. Now today in the second part of this chapter we will see the endogenic process, in which we will cover these four topics. So our first topic will be denudation. Then after that, students, we will move to weathering, and then after that we will see mass movement, and later we will see the soil formation. So students, let's start with the introduction of the topic, that is exogenic process. So we will see what is exogenic process, and then after that we will cover these four topics. So let's start. So students, let's see what is exogenic process. Students, the exogenic process include geological phenomena. It is including a geological phenomena and processes that originate externally to the earth surface. These processes are originate externally to the earth surface. Okay. So what we can say, they are genetically related to the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and as well as the biosphere. And students, therefore, to processes of weathering, erosion, transportation, deposition, and denudations, etc. So how many processes are there? We can say the weathering, the erosion, the transportation, deposition, and the denudation. So students, all the exogenic processes are covered under one general term, that is known as denudation. So to know more about the exogenic process, let's see what is denudation. So students, what is denudation? Students, the word denudation, it came from the word denude, which means uncover. What is the meaning of denude? That is uncover. The weathering, mass movement, erosion, and the transportation are included in the denudation activities. So students, we will see a flow charts through which we will become to know that what is denudation. So students, to know more about the denudational process, so let's see this flow chart through which you will become to know what is the process of the denudation and what are the driving forces and energies behind these processes. So first of all, the denudational process is divided into three parts. The process is divided into three parts. The process is, first one is weathering, second is mass movement, and as well the third is erosion or transportation. Okay, the third one is transportation. So students, the forces or the driving forces or the energies are behind the processes. These are the behind the weathering, that is the gravitational, molecular stress, or the chemical actions behind the weathering. Okay, and if you will see the mass movement, behind the mass movement there are the gravitational forces, and as well as if you will see the erosion or the transportation, the kinetic energy is behind the erosion or transportation process. So hope students, what we can say, that each process there is driving forces which is known as energy of the earth surface, which is caused by latitude, season, land and weather distribution, and so on. Okay, so many are there which are behind these forces. Okay, so students, in other factors we can include the climatic conditions, as you can see here. So students, if we add the climatic variations on the denudation process, there are so many types. Like first one is altitude. Altitude, like elevation, is the distance above sea level. It is also a cause of the denudation process. Second is angle of slope. Third are the oceanic currents. Fourth is the amount of insolation received by the region, and the insolation process, students, as you know, the energy is received by earth through the sunlight. Okay. Some other factors are wind velocity and direction, and the direction of the slope, daily range of temperature, the freezing frequency, and the sole driving force behind all the exogenic process in the sun. So students, hope you understood what is denudation. So now let's see the first process of denudation, that is weathering. So students, weathering is an important exogenic geomorphic process which is related to the breaking down of rocks, soil and the minerals, as well as few artificial materials through contact with the Earth's atmosphere. Students, there are three major groups of weathering process. These groups are the chemical, the physical and the biological. So what are these groups? That is, first group is chemical, second physical, and the third one group is as that biological. So students, let's see what are these groups one by one. Students, the chemical weathering process is a group of weathering process like hydration, oxidation, reduction, carbonation and solution acts on the rock to decompose, dissolve or reduce them to a fine clastic stage through the chemical reactions by oxygen surface and soil, water and other acids. Students, here we can say the chemical weathering includes the processes that cause rock to rot or decay due to the action of air and water on the minerals present in the rock. The high temperature and humidity caused the rock to decompose. Students, the chemical weathering results from the action of weak acids and gases, as I told you, that oxygen, carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Students, this process leads to the decomposition or decay of solid rocks by means of chemical reactions. Next type of weathering process is the physical weathering process. Students, physical weathering process is also known as mechanical weathering process, okay, which is depend on some applied forces. The applied forces could be the gravitational force, the expansion force and the water pressure. Students, the physical weathering is responsible for the disintegration of rocks without changing their chemical compositions. It is caused about mainly by changes in temperature and the pressing action of water. The mechanical weathering is physically breakup of rocks owing to internal and external stresses caused by weathering agents. Students, another type of weathering processes is biological activity. The biological weathering is contribution to or removal of minerals and ions from the weathering environment and physical changes due to growth or movement of organisms. Borrowing and wedding by organisms like earthworms, termites, rodents, etc. That helps in exposing the new surface to chemical attacks and assists in the penetration of moisture and air. Students, there are some special effects of weathering. These are known as exfoliation and spherical weathering. So students, now let's see the significance of weathering. So students, here are few significance of weathering. That first is, weathering processes are responsible for breaking down the massive rocks into smaller fragments, preparing the way for the formation of regoliths, soil erosion, and the mass movement. The second significance of the weathering, that is, weathering aids mass movement, erosion, and reduction of relief and changes in landforms as a result of erosion. Students, if we talk about the biomes, it is also a significance of weathering. The biomes and biodiversity is basically a result of forests, and forests depend upon the depth of weathering mantles as well as the weathering of rocks, and deposits help in the enrichment of certain valuable ores of iron, manganese, aluminium, copper, etc. And these are having the great importance for our national economy. Okay. So students, in this part of video you have studied about the exogenic forces, in which you have studied about the denudation, and you have seen the first denudation process, which is weathering. So in our next part of video we will see the mass movement and the soil formation.